Hello, Marvinauts. We have a new version for you. It's version 1.59.0. And just to update you a bit on what we're working on right now, I'm very busy working on the procrastination bootcamp, which I'm really excited about launching hopefully soon. It got quite extensive as I was working on it, but it's a big topic. And we're also laying the foundation for some future features that are pretty important and that we get lots of requests for, like collaborative type features. So we're laying a lot of groundwork things for that. And overall, we're also focused more on improving things that we have, making some changes we've wanted to make for a long time versus adding a lot of new big features. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But of course, we still like to add some new things here and there. And in this release, we have a new strategy. It's pretty simple. It's called Sequential Projects, just something that we've gotten lots of requests for over the years. And it allows you to mark a project as either parallel, meaning you can do all of the tasks anytime, basically, or you want to really work this project off step by step. So it's a bit like all of the tasks depend on the one before. So that's a sequential project. So you can enable this, and you then get the option for your projects. So let's say where we have a project here, you go into the edit, and right now it's parallel, that's the default, and you can switch it to be a sequential. Now this strategy is used with the backburner, so these two go together, because it will put all of the tasks that are not the first step into the backburner. So that's how this works. Now, because we have this feature now, we had to make some adjustments to advanced filters that we have. So if you've used isNextStep, the filter in the advanced smart list setup, you might want to change it to isFirstStep. So we have now isFirstStep and isNextStep. They're slightly different, and it also depends on if you use the sequential and parallel project feature or not. So just in case you are using that. Then we also added two-factor authentication if you want a little bit more security for logging into your account, and you will find this in your account page here. Enable two-factor authentication, you can set that up. We've also made a pretty important add-on for the recurring tasks. You can now decide how far into the future you need your tasks to be generated, because in Marvin, as you probably know, if you make a recurring task, it creates a parent task and individual instances. This is important because for planning purposes, and if you sometimes need to change individual instances, like add specific sub-tasks and things like that. But the big drawback here is that if it generates, let's say, daily tasks, and you have lots of daily tasks 90 days in the future, it can very quickly blow up the amount of tasks you have, which can affect performance. So for performance reasons, the less, the better. But some people have a workflow where they need to know, exactly what they have already scheduled 90 days into the future. Now, this is not super common, but it does happen. And so you can adjust it now. And be mindful, if most of these will say 15 days, it's about days, but for the custom, it's actually how many counts. So it's how many items into the future. So you want to be a bit mindful here and adjust this to your needs. So if you have performance issues, try reducing this. If you need it for a specific workflow to generate it into the future, you can adjust this higher. We've also added an option so that you can now subscribe to a public feed of a calendar, and this is part of the calendar sync strategy. So if you add a calendar now, there's also a public feed. So some calendars, from maybe universities or businesses, they have a public calendar, and so you can subscribe to it, so you get that task or these events into your Marvin as well. This is just one way. We are working on a reverse feed so that you can have one way with a feed from outgoing. So all the stuff in Marvin goes to calendar, and that's just in beta and available on pre right now. We're still testing that more. And then we added a nice little thing that I actually think can make some really cool new workflows. And that's in your smart list, you can limit how many items it should show. So let's say I want to have a smart list that just shows me 2 or 1 next item that is part of a MIP, is what I've set up here. has to be in a MIP, and I set the limit here on top to 1. So the smart list only ever has 1 item in it. Now this can be nice because you can sort of have maybe this list that you work on that's really not overwhelming, where you maybe always just have 2 choices and it just keeps filling up, but you don't really see more than 2 things at once. So that could be really nice if you struggle with overwhelm. Then I've already mentioned this. We have a new advanced filter for smart lists, isFirstStep. We also have one for via email, so you can see if a task was coming in through the email creation. So there's, just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, there's an email strategy where you can send an email to Marvin and it will create a task for you. There's another advanced filter for minutesTracked. So if you have started time tracking on something and you want to maybe have a smart list with things you've already worked more than 30 minutes on, because you maybe want to prioritize finishing things, you can now do that as well. We've added a completed item sections in the goal views, and goals and habits are still pretty new, so there's still a lot of things there we want to improve. And thank you for everybody who has been adding feedback about this to our product board. That's always really helpful. Then, speaking of goals, we have added a marker. So if your goal has a deadline, you can now see if you're on track with the progress. And remember that you can set up how you want to measure progress. You can have a tracker, or you can just look at the completion of the projects and tasks that are inside that goal. But this is just a little bit of a helpful thing to see if you're on track or not. And I believe this is also optional, so you can turn it off if you just really don't want to see that you're behind all the time, because the deadline isn't all that important. Then we also added a user request to have the option to show a deadline here. So now this can be used, and the top mini list strategy can be used as a little bit of a reminder for important deadlines if you like. This is also optional. Then we have added webhooks for habits. So if you are into working with the API and setting up some customizations, you can now work with habits. And a request that was pretty important for some people, and that was just a simple thing to add, is you can now choose your inbox color as well. Adjust that if you like. And we also made it so that you can, this is actually pretty cool, make a dependency chain with the bulk edit menu. So let me just show you. Now, adding dependency has always been a bit of a struggle, but let's say I have these 3 tasks and I want to do them in order. They all depend on each other. And normally this might not be something in your day. You can now press the command key on my Mac and then just click in the order that you want to do them. It's like, well, I have to first do this, and then this, and then this. And then you can click in the bulk ops menu, make dependencies, and now they're all chained. So you added a bunch of dependencies. So now when I click off this one, the next one shows up, and so forth. So you can do this in the master list with complex dependency structures, so it's much easier. And then just a few improvements. This is actually a pretty significant improvement about the keyboard navigation, something we've wanted to do for a really long time, but you can now finally use the arrow keys and go from tasks to projects to categories. And yeah, this is just really nice. And Mark did a ton of work with keyboard shortcuts in general, with the edit menu, so a lot of improvements there. And just a small thing, if you're using the agenda and you have your time blocks in the gutter, you can now click them to adjust them. And we also fixed a lot of bugs as usual. And yeah, I hope you like this release and have a good weekend soon.